working.
Alhamdulillah, wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu rasuluh. Ya akhwati fillah, ya akhwati fillah, barakallahu feekum jami'an. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to take from one of the sheikhs that I almost had a chance to meet when I was in Egypt. But the day that the brothers decided to go there, I was very sick with a stomach ailment, and I was not able to go and meet the sheikh, hafidhahullah ta'ala. The sheikh's book that we're going to take from is the famous book called Min Aklaq Salaf, from the characteristics of those people that came from before us. So inshallah ta'ala, the topic, inshallah, all the brothers, we ask you brothers, if you want to partake, come in the middle here, so we can kind of get some synergy. Inshallah, and for the brothers that have a khutbah on the side, inshallah, we ask you to go on, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Barakallahu feekum. Now, inshallah ta'ala, we want to try to take this opportunity to try to benefit, inshallah ta'ala, from the works of the Shaykh, the Allama, Shaykh Ahmed al-Fareed, hafidhahullah ta'ala. And this book, when it came out many years ago, me and the brothers, we drove from Toronto to Detroit to get this book because it wasn't available anywhere in Canada. So inshallah ta'ala, ya ikhwan, we want to inshallah ta'ala do 3 chapters from this book tonight, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, considering that the Maghrib and the Isha, I believe there's about an hour, hour and a half, something like that. So inshallah ta'ala, I came today prepared to try to teach, to try to share some information with our brothers and sisters. But there must be some food that's available, or maybe someone's going to watch the baseball game. Because it is sad these days that the Muslims, we're not concerned about learning how the people from the past were. And the ulama al-Rabbaniyun, rahimahullah wa rahmatullahi wasi'ah, they had a very beautiful statement where they went on to say, وَكُلُّ خَيْرٍ فِي اتِّبَاعٍ مِنْ سَلَفٍ وَكُلُّ شَرٍ فِي ابْتِدَاعٍ مِنْ خَلَفٍ. That every good is in following the people from the past, and every evil is from following the later generations. So it is of the utmost importance, ya ikhwan, ya akhwat, that we look, we investigate, we see how they live their life and how they practice their Islam. Because when we compare our Islam to their Islam, you believe and you would think that we're on a different religion than them. And unfortunately, some people, they say, Hum rijal wa nahnu rijal. They were men and we are men. Yes, this is true. But the reality of this topic of ar-rajula wal-muru'a, manhood and masculinity and integrity, this is something, as a new Muslim, I've never seen anybody, and I mean anybody, teach this topic of ar-rajula wal-muru'a fi-d-din. Manhood and masculinity and integrity. It's something that all these little boys, they should be teaching, along with learning the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So inshallah ta'ala, let us begin for those people that came here to benefit. And inshallah ta'ala, we're going to try to make this bi'ithnisal short and concise. So the Shaykh, he begins bi'idhnillahi ta'ala with the most important topic, the topic of al-ikhlas. Al-ikhlas, sincerity, being a person who is sincere. So the Shaykh, he goes on to say, the abundance of sincerity in the knowledge and the actions from the morals and the manners of the people of the past, the Salaf, was their abundant of ikhlas. They are very sincere in their knowledge and in their actions, fearing that they would fall into ar-riya, which means to show off, or sam'ah, to be heard of. This is something that we all, myself included, we need to be very careful of. So as Allah ta'ala, the Most High, he went on to say, عَلَى لِلَّهِ الدِّينَ الْخَالِصِ, is not to Allah the sincere religion due. Allah Ta'ala went on to say, is not to Allah the sincere religion due. Also Allah Ta'ala went on to say, another beautiful ayah, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. And they were not commanded except for to be sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to be upright from amongst those that practice the Hanafiyyat al-Samha, which was the religion of Ibrahim, alayhi salatu taslim, meaning to worship one God and one God alone. So we find in Ikhwan, Allah Ta'ala, He brought many ayat from the book of Allah. Allah Ta'ala went on to say, فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلَ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. Allah Ta'ala went on to say, whoever hopes for meeting with his Lord Ta'ala, then let him do the righteous actions and not associate any partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is of the utmost importance, ya ikhwan, ya akhwat. When you're looking at your brother here, many of you may not know that before there was a time in my life that I actually used to worship Isa ibn Maryam. Alayhi wa salatu taslim. I was born into a Christian family. I was raised looking at the cross. I was raised worshiping, not only trying to invoke Isa, but also his mother, alayhi wa salatu wa taslim. And now when we come into Islam, and I was in Egypt and I seen with my own eyes, I lived it, I witnessed it, I seen it. It's not khurafat, it's not a fantasy or a fairy tale. I went there to 3 popular masjids that are known to be people that claim to be Muslim, but in all reality, I went to Sayyid Badawi, I went to Masjid Hassan, Hussein, and I went to Masjid Fatima. And every single one of them, they claim to have a saint in the ground where they worship this saint. And I see people make sujood with their head on the ground, praying to these so-called awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as a new Muslim, 101 of Tawheed, Allah Ta'ala wanted to say, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. You alone, Allah, we worship, and you alone that we seek for help. So, ya ikhwan, it amazed me, being a person who grew up in the land that is considered the land of the Christians, and going to the land of the Muslims, and the people, they speak Arabic better than me, they read Quran better than me, they've had Islam for 1,000 years. Not only were they worshiping the graves, but wallahi, wa billahi, wa tallahi, I seen them offer food to these so-called dead-called saints. Leaving the food there overnight, hoping maybe that the saint will take this food somehow and benefit and maybe answer their prayers. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. So we find, ya ikhwan, where one of the very famous scholars from the past, his name was Ibrahim At-Taymi, he would say that the sincerely devoted one is the one who conceals his good deeds just like he conceals his bad deeds. And also we find, ya akhwat, that Ash-Sha'bi rahimahullah went on to say, from the manners of the scholars, is that if they know some knowledge, they would practice the knowledge that they had. And that's why Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayhi, he went on to say, Babu al-ilmi qabla qawli wal-amal. There's a chapter in Sahih Bukhari went on to say, chapter, knowledge takes precedence over the actions. So in our religion, any act of ibadah that we do, unless it's from Quran or Sunnah, then we can't just innovate any type of ibadah. It has to be from Allah and His Messenger. So we find, ya ikhwan, ya akhawat, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went on to say this beautiful hadith. And this hadith, ya ikhwan, ya akhawat, it is collected in At-Targhib wa Tarhib, also in As-Silsila Hadith As-Sahiha, also in Imam An-Nasa'i, and this hadith is Hasan, inshallah ta'ala, where the Prophet ﷺ went on to say, إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ لَا يَقْبَلُ مِنْ عَمَلٍ إِلَّا مَنْ كَانَ خَالِصًا وَابْتُغِيَ وَجْهَهُ وَكَمَا قَالَ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. That this, if it's not intended, any actions that you do, if it's not for the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you get up in the morning and you go to do an amal salihah, and this is important, as we say, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَةِ. Those who believe, who have iman in Allah, and they do the good actions, the Prophet ﷺ is saying that unless it's for the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you get up and you want to be mutasaddiq, you sisters, you take your money and you put it inside of the zakat box, then it should be for Allah Azza wa Jalla. Now unfortunately, I've seen, and Allah He knows the people's hearts, it was mentioned one time that Fulan wa Alan is in the masjid. And mashallah, another brother, his daughter was in the masjid and the father of the daughter was in the masjid. So as the scholars, they've said that sometimes the people will take their money to try to impress upon another individual that they're giving money for the sake of Allah, but really they're mixing maybe their intention with Allah and to get the approval of the so-called future father-in-law. Allah is not in need of these deeds. Also we find, ya akhwan, ya akhwat, where Allah Ta'ala, He went on to say, وَقِدْمَانَا إِلَى مَا عَمِلُوا مِنْ عَمَلٍ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ حَبَّاءً مَنْثُورًا. Allah Ta'ala went on to say, and we turned to what they used to do and made them into scattered dust. So we see, ya ikhwan, ya akhwat, that some of the non-Muslims, they do great actions in this dunya, but they're only going to get the reward in this dunya. So if somebody gives to help the poor, this is a good deed, this is a good action. But as we said before, إِلَى الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Come on, brothers. إِلَى الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Come on, it's very important that we have some class participation. All those ayat from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we read, there's actually information that we're supposed to digest, and we're supposed to practice that information. It's not just a book of barakah that we just come in Ramadan and somebody with a really beautiful voice, they come and they read so beautiful that they pronounce all the words, they have all the makharij haruf jayyid, the pronunciation is beautiful, and they have all the ahkam and tajweed, but we ourselves never studied the Arabic language, we don't know what they're talking, but yet our eyes shed. We find that the people of the past, when they read the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would read one ayah, and they would sit and think and ponder. And after pondering it, you'd find that they would have tears coming down from their eyes. So when we look at our Islam compared to their Islam, ya ikhwan, we want to know, is that this book, the Quran, that Allah Ta'ala gave to us, it should be a healer for the soul. When we open up that book, and just recently I had the opportunity to go to a masjid, the IMO masjid, they had one sheikh who just recently came from Egypt. And he read the Salat al-Maghrib last Thursday, I believe it was. And his recitation was so beautiful that every single Muslim was crying. But it was a surah that was in the later parts of the last parts of the Quran, and most of the Muslims, they either memorize that surah, or they have a good strong portion of it, they understand it. And all the brothers and all the sisters were weeping tears. Should we not want this effect, ya ikhwan? When we come to the salah, which we know is fard upon the believing men, but it's not fard for the sisters, that when we come, we should want that this salat, this Quran, it changes our heart, it melts our heart, and makes us want to get closer to Allah Azza wa Jalla. And ya ikhwan, when we heard that recitation, it's like our heart became fresh and new again. Just like a newborn baby, when you hear the words that are coming from Allah Ta'ala, down from his angel Jibril, down to the tongue of the Prophet ﷺ, down to the Sahaba, down to their students till it reached us. Ya ikhwan, there's been great sacrifice. Sisters, there's been great sacrifice that people have given us this beautiful information for our generations to come. So the Shaykh, he goes on to say that once they had practiced the knowledge, they would preoccupy themselves with the practice rather than the people. They would spend more time practicing the new knowledge that they learned than to actually sit and socialize with the people. Because again, إِلَى الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. And how much benefit is there in social gatherings? Did not the Prophet say, مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيَكُنْ خَيْرٍ أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. Whoever believes in Allah in the last day, let them say a word that is good or remain silent. And I ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make me better and to make you better. Say Ameen. Because it seems like the breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks of the Muslim is qila wa qal. What is buhtan, what is namima, slandering, backbiting, he said, she said. This has become our supper meal. And we find, ya ikhwan, that there's a narration where the Prophet ﷺ had admonished his wives because one of them threw up, and when they took the vessel with the throw up, they said this was their backbiting. So these were the mothers of the believers and some of the righteous women. And if you look at us, ya ikhwan, ya akhwat, we are no better than them. So we find that Imam Fadeel ibn Iyad, rahimahullah wa rahmatullahi wasi'ah, he's one of my favorite people from the past. And inshallah ta'ala, just a little side point, that Fadeel ibn Iyad wasn't always a righteous Muslim. There's a very famous story in the Sir A'lam al-Nubala, which is a very, very voluminous book. It's about 37 volumes. It is written by Imam al-Dhahabi, rahmatullah alayhi, where he wrote this book about the biographies of some of the greatest people who ever walked on the earth from amongst the Muslims. And in there he has the story of Fadeel ibn Iyad, rahmatullah alayhi, where Fadeel was known as a highway robber. He used to steal the people's money, he used to beat up the people, he used to rob the people, and it was feared that he would harm your women. So one day while he was going to visit one of his jariyah, one of his girlfriends, he decided to climb up one of his walls to go visit her one night. And he heard some mu'mineen reciting the verse, "Is it now not time that you find the fear of Allah in your heart?" And when he heard that verse, right at that time, tears started to shed from his cheek. And he made tawbah right then and there for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he changed his life. And he went from a highway robber to one of the greatest scholars of Islam. So as we know, ya ikhwan, khiyarakum jahiliya, khiyarakum Islam ala faqihu, kama qala sallallahu. That the best of you in the days of ignorance will become the best of you in the days of Islam if Allah gives you deep understanding of the religion. When you read Allah bihi khayr, yufaqihu fi din. If Allah wants good for an individual, He's going to give you some understanding, some wisdom, some benefit of this religion. So Fadeel ibn Iyad rahmatullah alayhi went on to say, if you saw a scholar or an abd, a worshipper, taking pleasure at their righteousness being mentioned in front of the rulers and the children of the world, then know that he is the one who has shown off. So, any good deeds that you see any imams or any da'is or any mashayikh or any students of knowledge or any teachers, any mu'allim, he's saying that if you used to see the scholars or the worshippers taking pleasure in their righteousness, mashallah, you did a great job, alhamdulillah, that lecture was great, oh mashallah, that recitation is good. The Shaykh was saying here, rahimahullah ta'ala, mentioned in front of the people or the rulers of the world, and he took pleasure in that, then know that they would consider this to be showing off. Why is this, ya ikhwan? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala went on to say, فَلَا تَزَكُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَهُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنْ اتَّقَى. And do not praise or sanctify yourself, because Allah, He knows those who have the true purity and piety and fear of Allah Azza wa Jalla. There's nobody that can say for sure that my deeds and my actions are accepted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We hope, we pray, we wish that we can do one action that's acceptable to Allah Azza wa Jalla. Because if Allah accepted one action that we did, khalis, lillahi ta'ala, there's a good chance that that deed could be multiplied into infinity, and Allah can allow this one deed, inshallah ta'ala, with His mercy, to allow us to go to the paradise. But who can say that any of their actions have been accepted to Allah? It is hoped, ya ikhwan. إِلَى الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Come on guys, come on. إِلَى الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. So this is a condition for our deeds to be accepted. So as I point, inshallah ta'ala, is from amongst the actions for the Muslims to be accepted, number one, you have to have Islam. You have to have Islam. As Allah Ta'ala went on to say, as we said the first verse before, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. And they were not commanded except for to worship Allah, to be sincere. So sincerity is one thing. عَلَى لِلَّهِ دِينُ الْخَالِص. So that's another verse. And the hadith of the Prophet إِنَّمَا أَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ إِلَى آخِرِهِ, to the end of that. So our intention is very important, but also we need to have our Islam intact. Our Islam is very, very, very important. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala went on to say, وَلَا تُمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. Anybody know what that verse means? Can anybody tell me? Allah is saying you don't die except for in the state of Islam. So for you to die in the state of Islam, you have to live your life according to Islam. It's extremely important, ya ikhwan. Allah Ta'ala wants to say, وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرِ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَا يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. And whoever accepts a religion other than Islam, it'll never be accepted from Allah, and in the end, he'll be from amongst the losers. So this is the second thing, is that we have to have Islam, we have to have sincerity, and who can tell me what the third thing is? The third thing is all of our actions have to be muwafaqat sunnah. It has to be with the obedience and the application of following the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The evidence for that is what? وَمَا أَتْحَاكُمَ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. There's many verses, but this is one. Whatever the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he gives you, you have to take it. Whenever he tells you to stay away from something, then you stay away from it. So inshallah ta'ala, the Shaykh he goes on to say, the reason being that ikhlas, sincerity, is to desire through knowledge and practice. So it's important for us to learn the religion, but we have to practice the religion. What good is it? And as Allah Ta'ala, he made a reference to Bani Israel, how they used to stack the knowledge of books on the back of donkeys. We have to be careful of it. Now we have lots of books, but maybe we read them, but we don't practice. But then again, nowadays, Muslims don't even read their own books. It's a sad, sad day that we're more interested in entertainment, in sports, and fun, and singing, and comedy, and all those things than reading the books of the scholars. One of the brothers that I used to deal with a lot of business, he told me, within the last 10 years after 9/11, the book sales dropped like this. Number one, it's not fashionable to be a practicing Muslim. Number two, the onslaught of practicing Islam in North America has become very difficult. Number three, the internet. Oh, brother, I'll get that book online. It's okay. I'm not going to spend my money on buying that book. I'll get it online. Oh, brother, I'm not going to buy that CD or that DVD. I'll get it online. Not everything is online. And then again, what's happening to our culture that the actual nusakh, a book, that we don't even want to hold the book in our hand now. We want to get a PDF file downloaded to, what's this thing here called? Let me show you here.
Smartphone?
Seeing is believing. Seeing is believing. One brother said he had about 1,000 books on his USB. He had 1,000 books on his USB. I said, hey, can you access it right now? He said, no, I gotta go home and get my computer. It's okay, you got the knowledge, but you can't access it right now. Whereas now, I got the book. I can open it up right now. So we're losing our culture. This is a very, very serious thing. So the Shaykh went on to say, the things which with Allah the Most High amongst the signs of discreet showing up of riyah, khafi, is to feel cheerful, being praised or noticed for one's action. The salaf, the people from the past, used to count this as a greater than a major sin, since it is minor shirk, associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Shaykh goes on to say, and from the customs of the Arabs, when they read the books, they usually say, dear brother. So he went on to say, oh brother, search yourself. Oh sister, search yourself in your knowledge and in your action. Weep over them if you find them to be in love to be seen amongst the people, or to be heard amongst the people. Knowing that whoever loved to be seen or heard is shown up with humiliation and exposed in the world and in the hereafter. We ask Allah protection in these two worlds. We don't want to be humiliated in this world, and we definitely don't want to be humiliated in the next world. So inshallah ta'ala, it is something that the great scholar of Islam, Imam Shaheed, rahimahullah wa rahmatullahi wasi'ah, he used to study many Islamic topics, and he perfected many Islamic topics. But he said he could never perfect the science of purifying the intention. It was very difficult, because you could come to a place like this with an intention to try to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm just giving you an example. It's not true. It's just an example. It's not true. Let's say it again. It's just an example. Say it again with me.
It's just an example.
It's not true. A sheikh could be sitting giving a lecture. All of a sudden, a beautiful woman, she comes and she sits down in his class. And he starts to really give the lecture really good. Alhamdulillah, mashallah. He really starts to get really powerful with his delivery. But before she walked in, his delivery was garbage. But as soon as she came in, all of a sudden, now his delivery is good. Or a sister heard that there's a sheikh coming from Saudi Arabia. Let's give an example. It's not true. Just give an example. And this sheikh is the most knowledgeable and most wealthy sheikh. And this sister happens to be beautiful. So the sheikh is going to stay in the masjid for 3 days. So she decides to cook, send him food, send him tea, vacuum, pray in the masjid, tahajjud, do all kinds of stuff. We've seen stuff like this before, right? Now, Allah Alam, we're not getting into people's intention, but it could be a thing that you did a deed, but you're mixing your intentions. So if you have that intention that you want to get married, then keep that as your intention. You want to get married for the sake of Allah. But don't try to say, okay, I want to try to get married and I'm going to try to mix some of my ibadah with it at the same time. So you were never known to be a person who mopped the masjid, or you washed the masjid, or you vacuumed the masjid, but now the sheikh is coming, you want to now start to becoming really pious. And the same goes on for the brothers. So ya ikhwan, who got some benefit from chapter 1? Put up your hand. We're going to do 2 more chapters, inshallah. Okay. These brothers never got any benefit. They didn't put up their hand. And the sisters there, they didn't learn anything. So inshallah, we'll try to get a better chapter, inshallah. So chapter 2, the Shaheed goes on to say, and this is the book that we're taking from. Actually, it's been reprinted now and it has a new cover on it. The Shaheed goes on to say, chapter 2, pausing in every word and action until establish correctness. So from the morals and the manners, the etiquettes of the people from the past, the salaf, was their stopping at every word and action until they knew its weight in the book and the sunnah of the Prophet. So when we say the book, which book are we talking about?
Quran. Quran.
What?
Quran.
Kermit?
Quran.
Hermit, the
Captain?
Quran.
Al-Quran. Yeah, Quran. Okay, mashallah. The Quran, the book of Allah. That's very good. Okay, I'll do that. So, this was due to the possibility that their statement or their action could be from amongst the innovations, those things that had nothing to do with the religion. And this is why, brothers and sisters, it amazes me that coming from a family of Christian people who say they love God, who say they love Jesus, who say they have this book, Ahl-Kitab, they practice their book. My family, my particular family, my father and my mother, they don't read the Bible that much. They're not that religious. But when it comes time for the holidays, they're the most religious people. We have to cook food, and we have to show that we're in the spirit. We like to give gifts. And this is one of the things that we'll find that even, unfortunately, the Muslims, there's Muslims, we don't see them except for on Eid. We call them Abdul. They worship Eid, they only come on Eid. Well, there's just like that, there's Christians, there's Abdul Christmas. Christians that come out for Christmas. Other than that, they don't come to the church. So, it amazes me that as a new Muslim, trying to learn this religion, I've been Muslim now for 23 years, alhamdulillah. And I try my best to learn the religion, sit with those more knowledgeable than me, still trying to study, learn the Arabic language, and the grammar is extremely deep. It's a very hard subject for me to master, even to study, even though other subjects I find them very easy to study. The Arabic language is extremely hard because it has levels upon levels upon levels upon levels upon levels upon levels. And sometimes I even get scrutinized by some of the Arabs. The Arabs say, Ya akhi, astaghfirullah, fi akhta. You have a mistake. في مخارج الحروف ليس جيدة. Your pronunciation is not good. I said, barakallahu fik. I'm not an Arab. I speak 4 languages. How many do you speak? Oh, I speak 2 languages. I speak in 2 languages. I said, okay, brother, mashallah. I'll help you. I'm not trying to correct your English, even though it sucks. One of the brothers told me the other day, he said, I don't speak any Arabic. The Arabic is awful. I said, barakallahu fik. Jazakallahu khair. I went to some of the other more beautiful brothers in the city that happen to speak Arabic. I said, don't worry about these people from that land. Their Arabic is no good either. So even the Arabs, they criticize their pronunciation from the Maghrib all the way to the lands of Sham. The Libyans say that the Egyptians' Arabic is no good. The Arabics say that the Saudis' Arabic is no good. And the Saudis say that the Kuwaitis' Arabic is no good. And the Jordanians say that the Syrians' Arabic is no good. And the Syrians say that everyone's Arabic is no good. And then the Moroccans say that they have better Arabic there. The Mauritanians say they have the best Arabic. So the whole thing is learn Arabic. Try to learn some Arabic so you can read the Book of Allah. That's why I'm trying to learn Arabic. I don't want to learn Arabic to hang out with the Arabs. I want to learn Arabic so I can read Allah's book, and I can learn something, and I can practice something, and I can understand the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. I have my own languages. I have my own heritage. I have my own background. But Islam came down in the religion, the Arabic language. So that's why we try our best to learn this language.